Before we start, hit subscribe if you want more stories like this. Drop a like and comment where you're watching from. Let's get into it. I am Thomas Wilson, and in 1994 I was farming wheat in western Kansas. We had 320 acres of land that my grandfather had acquired as a settlement in 1889. It was very fertile land. When properly cultivated and the process was carried out thoroughly, it was land where, so to speak, anything could grow. But in 1934, nothing was growing. The drought had started in 1931. 3 years of failed crops, dust storms that blocked out the sun, and topsoil blowing away in clouds that stretched from Canada to Texas. They were calling it the Dust Bowl, the worst agricultural disaster in American history, and I was living right in the middle of it. My wife Martha and I had 2 children, Samuel, who was 8, and Rebecca, who was 6. We'd been farming the land for 10 years, ever since we got married. Good years and bad years, but we'd always made it work. Always managed to put food on the table and keep the bank from taking the farm. Until the drought. By the summer of 1934, we were desperate. The wheat we'd planted in the spring had withered and died before it got 6 inches tall. The vegetable garden Martha kept near the house produced nothing but dust and dead plants. Our livestock, 3 cows and a dozen chickens, were skin and bones. We'd already sold our horse and most of our equipment just to buy food. The bank was threatening foreclosure. We had maybe 2 months before they'd come take the land. Land my grandfather had bled for. Land my father had died protecting. Land I'd promised myself I'd pass on to Samuel someday. But you can't pass on dirt and dust. It was July 15th when the salesman came. I was in the barn trying to repair a broken plow blade when I heard the car. Not many cars came down our road anymore. Most of our neighbors had already packed up and left, heading west to California like thousands of others. The Dust Bowl refugees. The Okies, though most of them weren't from Oklahoma. I stepped out into the yard and saw a black Ford Model A pulling up to the house. Clean. Well-maintained. Strange to see something so clean when everything else was covered in a layer of dust. A man got out, tall, thin, wearing a suit that was too nice for Kansas in July. He had a salesman's smile and a leather case in his hand. "Mr. Wilson," he called out. "Thomas Wilson, that's me." He walked over, hand extended. "Name's Elijah Thorne. I represent a company that specializes in agricultural solutions. I understand you've been having some difficulties with your crops." I didn't shake his hand. "Everyone's having difficulties, Mr. Thorne. It's called a drought. Unless you're selling rain, I'm not interested." He smiled. "Not selling rain, selling something better. Selling results." Martha had come out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. The children were behind her, peering around her skirt. They looked thin. Too thin. It made my chest hurt to see it. "I'm not buying anything," I said. "We don't have money for snake oil." Thorne's smile didn't fade. "Not selling, Mr. Wilson. Offering. A solution to your problem. One Scarecrow. Guaranteed to protect your crops. Guaranteed harvest. Money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied." I laughed. It was a bitter sound. "A scarecrow? Mister, I've got 3 scarecrows in my fields right now. They're not doing a damn thing because there's nothing to protect. The crops are dead. The soil is dead. The whole damn plains is dead. What if I told you this scarecrow is different? What if I told you it can bring life back to dead soil? What if I told you that farms using our scarecrows are the only ones in Kansas still producing crops?" That got my attention. I'd heard rumors, whispers about farms that were still growing wheat while everyone else failed. I'd assumed they had some secret water source or better soil. But now this man was standing in my yard claiming it was because of a scarecrow. "I don't believe in magic," I said. "Good, neither do I. This isn't magic, Mr. Wilson. This is science, agricultural innovation. Our company has developed a scarecrow that fundamentally changes the soil composition in a 1-acre radius, enriches it, revitalizes it, makes it productive again even in drought conditions. How? That's proprietary information. Company secret. But I can show you testimonials from a dozen farmers who've seen their yields increase by 400% after installation. He opened his case and pulled out a folder. Showed me photographs of wheat fields heavy with grain, golden and healthy. Letters from farmers I'd never heard of, all praising the miracle scarecrow. "What's the catch?" I asked. Thorne's smile widened. "There's always a catch, isn't there? This one's simple. 3 rules you have to follow. Break any of them and the guarantee is void." "What rules?" "First, the scarecrow must be moved to a different field every night at exactly midnight, not 11:59, not 12:01, midnight precisely. Second, you must never look directly at its face, eyes down when you're moving it. Third, you must never speak to it. No words, no sounds. Complete silence during the move." I stared at him. "That's it? Move it at midnight, don't look at it, don't talk to it? That's it? And if I follow those rules, my crops will grow?" "Guaranteed. Within 2 weeks, you'll see new growth. Within a month, you'll have a harvestable crop. Within 3 months, you'll have yields that'll pay off your bank debt and feed your family through the winter." I looked at Martha. She was watching me with those eyes that had seen too much hardship. Eyes that trusted me to make the right choice, even when there were no right choices left. "How much?" I asked. Thorne closed his folder. "No money up front. You pay after the first successful harvest. 10% of your yield. Seems fair, doesn't it? You only pay if it works." It seemed too good to be true, which meant it probably was, but I was desperate. We all were. "What happens if I break one of the rules?" I asked. "The guarantee is void, and you owe us the full value of the scarecrow immediately." $500. My stomach dropped. $500. I didn't have 500 cents. "Seems like a strong incentive to follow the rules," Thorne said. I thought about it, really thought about it. 3 simple rules. Move it at midnight. Don't look at its face, don't speak to it. How hard could that be? "I'll do it," I said. Thorne smiled and we shook hands. His grip was cold, despite the July heat. The scarecrow was in the back of his car. He pulled it out and I got my first good look at it. It was taller than a normal scarecrow, maybe 7 feet, built on a wooden frame with burlap clothing and a potato sack head. Nothing special about it at first glance, just a scarecrow, but something about it felt wrong. The way it hung on the frame, the way the burlap seemed to move slightly even though there was no wind, the way I found myself not wanting to look at where its face would be. Thorne set it up in my north field, the one that had been wheat but was now just cracked earth and dead stalks. He checked his pocket watch. "It's 3 p.m. now. You've got 9 hours until your first move. Midnight exactly, Mr. Wilson. Different field each night. Never the same field twice in a row. And remember the other rules." "I will." He got back in his car. Before he drove away, he leaned out the window. "One more thing, Mr. Wilson. Don't miss a night, ever. The scarecrow needs to move every single night at midnight. Miss even one, and there will be consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that make $500 seem like a small price." Then he was gone, driving away in a cloud of dust. I stood there looking at the scarecrow in my field. It stood perfectly still, arms outstretched, face hidden under that burlap sack. Just a scarecrow. Just a thing made of wood and cloth. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was looking at me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my pocket watch. 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 11:30. The time crawled. Martha asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't explain. Couldn't put into words the dread I felt about going out there at midnight. At 11:55 I got up, put on my boots and jacket even though it was warm, grabbed my flashlight. "Where are you going?" Martha asked. "Got to move the Scarecrow. Part of the deal." "At midnight?" "Thomas, that's crazy. That's the rule." I walked out to the north field. The Scarecrow was exactly where Thorn had left it. I approached it slowly, flashlight beam focused on the ground. Don't look at its face. That was the rule. At exactly midnight, by my watch, I reached for it. The moment my hands touched the wooden frame, I felt it. A pulse, like a heartbeat, slow and deep and wrong. I almost let go, almost ran back to the house and forgot the whole thing. But I thought about Rebecca's thin face, Samuel's hollow eyes, the bank notice sitting on our Kit Watson table. I lifted the Scarecrow. It was heavy, heavier than it should have been for wood and burlap. I struggled with it, trying to keep my eyes down, trying to stay silent. Carried it across the field to the south pasture. Set it up in the middle of the dead grass. The whole time I could feel it. That pulse, that wrongness. When I let go and stepped back, I swear I heard it exhale. Just a soft release of breath. But scarecrows don't breathe. I walked back to the house without looking back. 2 weeks later, the north field was growing. I couldn't believe it at first. Thought it was a mirage, a trick of the heat and dust. But when I walked out there in the early morning, I saw green. Actual green. Wheat sprouting from soil that had been dead for 3 years. Martha cried when she saw it. Samuel and Rebecca ran through the rows of new growth, laughing. I hadn't heard them laugh in months. Every night at midnight I moved the Scarecrow. North field to south pasture to east acreage to west lot. A different field each night, never the same twice in a row. And everywhere it spent the night, crops began to grow. Within a month we had wheat tall enough to harvest. Golden and heavy and perfect. More wheat than I'd grown even in the good years before the drought. The neighbors noticed. Frank Miller from the farm 2 miles west came by to ask what my secret was. His crops had failed again. His family was packing up to leave for California. I don't know. I lied. Just got lucky with the soil, I guess. But I knew. It was the Scarecrow. By August, we'd harvested enough wheat to pay the bank and stock our pantry for winter. Samuel and Rebecca had color in their cheeks again. Martha smiled. We were going to make it. But moving the Scarecrow was getting harder. Every night it felt heavier. Every night that pulse was stronger. And sometimes when I was carrying it across the fields, I'd hear sounds. Not wind, not animals. Something else. Like voices. Like breathing. Like something alive inside the burlap and wood. I kept my eyes down. Kept silent. Followed the rules. But I was starting to understand that Elijah Thorne hadn't been selling me a Scarecrow. He'd been selling me something else entirely. September came, and our farm looked like something from before the drought. Fields of wheat ready for harvest. Vegetable garden producing tomatoes and squash. Even our livestock had fattened up. The cows were giving milk again. The chickens were laying eggs. We were the only farm in 50 miles that was thriving. Every other farm around us was dying. The Millers to the west had given up and left for California. The Johnsons to the east had lost everything to the bank. The Hartwell family to the north had simply disappeared one night, leaving their farmhouse empty and their fields to blow away. I told myself it wasn't my fault. Told myself I'd just gotten lucky. Found a solution that worked. There was nothing wrong with success, but I knew better. The Scarecrow was changing. Every night when I moved it, it felt heavier. What had started as maybe 50 pounds was now easily 100, sometimes more. I'd strained to lift it, my back aching, sweat pouring down my face even in the cool night air. and the sounds were getting louder, no longer just breathing. Now I could hear movement inside the burlap, shifting, settling, like something was packed in there, something organic. I kept my eyes down, kept silent, followed the rules, but my hands would come away from the wooden frame covered in something, not quite moisture, not quite residue, something slick and cold that I'd have to wash off back at the house. Martha asked about it once, asked why I came in from the midnight moves looking so shaken. "It's just heavy," I said. "Hard work." She didn't push. We both knew that as long as the crops kept growing, as long as our children had food, we didn't ask too many questions. But then the disappearances started. First, it was the Hartwell family. We'd noticed they were gone, but assumed they'd left for California like so many others. But then Sheriff Morrison came by asking if we'd seen them. Said their car was still in the barn, their belongings still in the house. They hadn't left, they'd just vanished. "Did you see or hear anything unusual?" Morrison asked. "Your farm is closest to theirs." "No," I lied. "Been too busy with harvest." He looked at my fields, at the golden wheat and healthy crops, whistled low. "How are you doing it, Thomas? Every other farm is dust and you're growing like it's 1925. "Good soil," I said. My grandfather knew how to pick land. Morrison didn't look convinced, but he left. Said he'd let me know if the Hartwells turned up. They never did. Then the livestock started vanishing. I first noticed it with the Miller place. They'd left their animals behind. Too expensive to transport to California. 3 cows and maybe 20 chickens. I'd been checking on them, feeding them, planning to buy them once the bank sold the property. One morning, the cows were gone. All 3. No tracks, no signs of struggle, just gone. Rustlers, I thought. Times were hard. People were desperate. But then the Johnson horses disappeared. 4 of them, from a locked barn. And the Peterson pigs, a whole pen of them, vanished overnight. Something was taking livestock from every abandoned farm around us. And our farm kept growing. I tried not to make the connection, tried not to think about the timing, but I couldn't ignore it anymore after the night I saw the Scarecrow move on its own. It was October 3rd. I'd just finished the midnight move, placing the Scarecrow in the west field. Walked back to the house, washed my hands, tried to sleep. But something made me look out the bedroom window around 3 a.m. The Scarecrow was in a different position. I'd placed it facing north. Now it was facing east, toward the Peterson farm where the pigs had vanished. I told myself I'd misremembered, that I'd faced it east to begin with. But I knew I hadn't. The next night I marked the ground where I placed it, used a stick to draw a line showing exactly which direction it faced. At 3 a.m. I checked. It had turned. Not just turned, moved. It was 3 feet from where I'd left it and facing south, toward the Johnson place where the horses had disappeared. Scarecrows don't move on their own. I went out there, broke my own rule, and went out in the middle of the night, flashlight in hand, to examine it. Up close, in the darkness, it looked different. The burlap was stretched tighter, bulging in places. The potato sack head seemed fuller, and I could hear breathing, steady and slow and definitely real. I reached out to touch it. "Don't," a voice said. I spun around. A man was standing at the edge of the field, tall and thin. Elijah Thorne. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Checking on my investment. Making sure you're following the rules." He stepped closer. "You're following the rules, aren't you, Mr. Wilson?" "Yes, every night at midnight. Different field, eyes down, no talking. Good. That's very good." He circled the Scarecrow slowly. "It's grown quite a bit, hasn't it? Working well for you? The crops are good, better than good." "Yes, I can see that." You have the healthiest farm in the county, perhaps in the whole state. Remarkable, isn't it? What proper soil enrichment can do. What is it? I asked. What is this thing really? Thorne smiled. It's exactly what I said it was. A scarecrow, an agricultural solution, something that makes your crops grow. By doing what? What's it feeding on? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You haven't broken any rules, Mr. Wilson. Best to keep it that way. Best not to ask questions you don't want answered. People are disappearing. Livestock is vanishing. And my crops are growing. Those things are connected, aren't they? Everything's connected, Mr. Wilson. The soil needs nourishment. You can use chemical fertilizer or manure or compost. Or you can use what's available. What's already here, what nature provides." My stomach turned. You're saying it's using people? Animals? As fertilizer? I'm saying your crops are growing. Your family is eating. Your debt is paid. Does it matter how? Yes, it matters, does it? Thorne stepped closer. Look around you, Mr. Wilson. This is the Dust Bowl, the worst drought in history. Millions of people are starving. Thousands are dying. And you're asking me if it matters that your family is thriving? That your children have full bellies? Not like this. Not by killing people. Who's killing anyone? The Hartwells left for California. The animals wandered off or got taken by coyotes. These things happen. Farms fail. People disappear. It's tragic, but it's not your fault. Isn't it? Thorne's smile faded. You made a deal, Mr. Wilson. You agreed to the terms. 3 simple rules. You've been following them perfectly. Keep doing that, and everything will be fine. And if I stop, if I destroy this thing, then you break the deal. You owe us $500 immediately, and you lose everything. The crops die, the soil turns back to dust. Your family starves. Is that what you want? No. Then keep following the rules. Keep moving it every midnight. Keep your eyes down and your mouth shut. And enjoy your harvest. He turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Mr. Wilson, the Scarecrow needs to eat. If you don't provide enough nearby, it'll start looking closer to home, so maybe make sure there's always something else available. For your family's sake. He walked away into the darkness. I stood there shaking, understanding now what I'd agreed to, what I'd brought onto my land. The Scarecrow was a predator, and I was feeding it. But I had no choice. I had children to feed, a wife to protect, a farm to save. So I kept moving it, and things kept disappearing. The Morrison family farm went empty. The Kellers packed up and left. The Davis family vanished like the Hartwells had. Our crops kept growing. By November, we had more wheat than we could store, more vegetables than we could eat. Our livestock was healthy and multiplying. I'd paid off all our debts and had money in the bank for the first time in years. We were successful, prosperous, the only thriving farm in the entire county, and all it cost was the lives of everyone around us. I tried to convince myself they'd just moved away, that the livestock had been taken by rustlers or wild animals, that the disappearances were coincidence. But I knew better. The Scarecrow was getting harder to move. Some nights it took me 15 minutes just to lift it. The wooden frame groaned under the weight. The burlap stretched and bulged, and the sounds coming from inside were unmistakable now. Chewing, digesting, consuming. One night in late November I made a mistake. I was moving the Scarecrow from the north field to the east pasture. It was particularly heavy that night, maybe 200 pounds. I was struggling, my arms shaking, sweat stinging my eyes. And I looked up. I saw its face. The burlap had torn slightly, just a small rip near where the eyes should be, And through that rip I saw something. Not wood, not stuffing, something wet, something that moved, something that looked back at me. I dropped the Scarecrow, broke the rule about staying silent, and screamed. The thing hit the ground with a wet thud, and I swear I heard it hiss. Not like air escaping, like something alive and angry. I ran back to the house, locked the doors, sat up the rest of the night with my rifle, watching the fields. The Scarecrow stayed where I'd dropped it, face down in the dirt, unmoving, but I'd broken a rule, and Thorn had said there would be consequences. Morning came and I went out to check. The Scarecrow was gone. Not moved to a different field, gone. The ground where it had fallen was scorched black. And leading away from that spot were tracks. Not human tracks, not animal tracks, something else. They led south, toward our house. I followed them, my rifle ready, my heart pounding. The tracks stopped at our barn. I opened the door slowly. Inside, in the darkness, I heard breathing. The Scarecrow was standing in the corner, facing me. And even though I couldn't see its face clearly in the shadows, I knew it was watching me, waiting. I stood in the barn doorway, rifle raised, staring at the Scarecrow in the corner. It didn't move, just stood there in the shadows. That torn burlap face pointed in my direction. The temperature in the barn was wrong, too cold for November. My breath came out in clouds, and I could see frost forming on the wooden walls despite the mild weather outside. "You need to move me," it said. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Not quite sound. More like a thought forced into my head. Like something pressing against the inside of my skull and speaking directly into my brain. I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. Terror had frozen my tongue and my legs and every part of me that wanted to run. "Midnight," it said. "Every night. That's the rule. You broke the rule. You looked, you dropped me, but I'll forgive you if you move me." Now, I wanted to run. Wanted to get Martha and the children and drive away and never look back. Wanted to pretend this was a nightmare I could wake up from. But my feet wouldn't move, and I knew, deep in my bones, that running wouldn't help. Whatever this thing was, it was already too late to escape it. "If you don't move me," the voice continued, "I'll have to feed myself, and the closest food is in your house, your wife, your children. I can taste them from here, young, tender, so much better than livestock, so much sweeter than the dried-up husks I've been consuming. Move me, Thomas Wilson, or I'll move myself. And you won't like where I move to." I found my voice. "What are you?" Silence for a moment. Then, "I'm what you agreed to, what you needed, what you chose. I'm salvation and damnation. I'm the answer to your prayers and the price for those prayers. I'm what happens when desperation meets opportunity. Now move me to the north field. We'll pretend this didn't happen. We'll go back to the arrangement." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the rifle. But I set it aside carefully and approached the thing. Kept my eyes down this time, fixed on the dirt floor, on my boots, on anything except that torn burlap face. I gripped the wooden frame. It was cold, colder than November air should make it, colder than ice. The cold burned my palms, but I held on, and the weight was incredible. Heavier than it had ever been, like I was trying to lift a grown man, or several grown men. I dragged it out of the barn. My back screamed in protest, my arms burned. Every step was agony. The thing felt like it was getting heavier with each yard, like it was testing me, seeing how far I'd go. The walk to the north field took nearly an hour. I had to stop every few minutes to catch my breath, to let my arms recover, to convince myself to keep going. All the while, I could feel it watching me, even with my eyes down, even with the burlap sack covering whatever passed for its face. I could feel its attention like heat on the back of my neck. When I finally reached the north field and set it up, my watch read exactly midnight. I'd somehow timed it perfectly despite the stops and starts. The moment I let go and stepped back, I felt the temperature change. The unnatural cold receded like a wave pulling back from shore. And the presence, that horrible awareness that something was watching and thinking and hungering, faded back to dormancy. But not gone, never gone, just waiting. I stumbled back to the house, locked every door and window, checked on Martha and the children. They were asleep, breathing normally, unaware of what I'd just done, what I'd just encountered. I sat at the Kit Watson table with my rifle across my lap and waited for dawn. Martha found me there when the sun came up. She looked worried. "Thomas, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Nothing," I lied. My voice sounded hollow even to me. Just couldn't sleep. Worried about the crops. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she was too kind to press, too understanding. She just made coffee and breakfast and tried to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Not anymore. For the next week, I didn't miss a single midnight move. Didn't look at its face. Didn't make a sound during the transfer. Followed every rule with obsessive precision. I started bringing my pocket watch, checking it constantly, making sure I started the move at exactly 11:45 p.m. so I'd finish at exactly midnight, counting my steps, marking the ground, doing everything perfectly. The Scarecrow didn't speak again, but I could feel it. Always. Even during the day when I was working the fields or tending the livestock, I could feel its attention. Like I was being watched by something patient and ancient and endlessly hungry. And the farms around us kept emptying. The Morrison family to the south packed up one morning and left. Didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note. Just gone. Their farm sat empty, their livestock wandering loose until I brought them to my barn. The Keller place to the east went the same way. Then the Davis farm, then the Hartley property. By mid-December, we were the only occupied farm within 15 miles. The whole area was a ghost town. Empty houses with doors banging in the wind. Abandoned fields drifting with dust. The skeletal remains of failed farms stretching in every direction. And our farm thrived. The wheat was so thick I could barely walk between the rows. The vegetables grew faster than we could harvest them. Our livestock multiplied. 3 cows became 6. A dozen chickens became 30. We had more food than we could possibly eat. More than we could store. I started driving into town twice a week to sell the excess. People couldn't believe it. The only successful farm in the county, maybe in the whole state, in the worst year of the Dust Bowl. They asked questions. How was I doing it? What was my secret? Was there water underground on my property that other farms didn't have? I lied, said it was just good soil, my grandfather's land, better drainage, lucky breaks. But the questions made me nervous, made me wonder how long before someone started investigating more seriously. Sheriff Morrison came by on December 10th. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, exhausted, defeated, like he'd aged 10 years in 3 months. "Thomas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. What is it?" He pulled out a notebook, flipped through pages covered in cramped handwriting. 17 families have disappeared from this county in the last 3 months. Not moved away. Disappeared. No forwarding addresses, no goodbye notes, belongings left behind, cars still in barns, and every single one of them lived within 5 miles of your farm. I kept my face neutral. That's strange? Strange? Morrison's voice rose. It's more than strange, Thomas. It's impossible. People don't just vanish. Not 17 families, not all at once, not all from the same area. Times are hard, Sheriff. People do desperate things. Maybe they left for California and their cars are still here, their belongings, their livestock. Morrison slammed his hand on my kit Watson table. Martha flinched. The children looked up from their schoolwork. People don't walk to California. People don't leave everything behind unless something forced them to leave. Maybe they did. Maybe the drought isn't making people vanish, Thomas. Something else is. He leaned forward. And I think you know what it is. I don't know what you're talking about. Morrison stared at me. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looked out at my fields, at the golden wheat swaying in the breeze, at the healthy crops that shouldn't exist. How are you doing it? He asked quietly. Everyone else has dust and you have wheat. Everyone else is starving and you're thriving. How? Good soil, I told you. Bullshit. He turned to face me. I've been watching your farm at night. I've seen you moving something. Every midnight like clockwork. What is it? A scarecrow. I move it to different fields for better coverage. Why at midnight? That's just when I do it. Better for the crops. Morrison's hand rested on his gun. Thomas, I think you know what's happening to these people. I think whatever you're doing on this farm is connected. And I think you need to tell me the truth before more people die. I almost did. Almost told him everything. About Thorne, about the deal, about what the Scarecrow really was, about the voices and the cold and the horrible awareness that something unnatural was living on my land. But then I thought about Martha, about Samuel and Rebecca, about the full pantry and the paid mortgage and the healthy livestock, about how we'd gone from starving to thriving in just a few months. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. People are leaving because of the drought, that's all. Now get off my property. Morrison stared at me for a long moment. His hand stayed on his gun. Then he said slowly, I'm going to figure this out, Thomas. I don't know how, but I will. And when I do, if you're involved in these disappearances, I'm coming back, and I won't be asking polite questions. He left, but I knew he meant it, knew he'd keep investigating, keep watching. That night, I was more nervous than usual when I went out to move the Scarecrow, kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see Morrison's car on the road, his shadow in the darkness. But when I reached the field where I'd left the Scarecrow, I found something else. Bones. Human bones. Half buried in the soil at the base of the Scarecrow. Ribs and vertebrae, and a skull with the jaw still attached. They were old, weathered, but definitely human. I dropped to my knees and started digging with my hands. Found more bones buried just beneath the surface. Dozens of them. All mixed in with the rich, dark soil. The soil that was growing my wheat. I dug faster, more frantically, uncovering bone after bone, an entire skeleton, then parts of another, then another. There were bodies buried throughout the field. All of them reduced to bones. All of them feeding the soil that fed my crops. The Hartwells, the Davises, the Morrisons, all the disappeared families. They weren't gone. They were here, in my fields, in my soil, their bones mixed with the earth, their remains becoming the fertilizer that made my wheat grow. I vomited, fell forward onto my hands and vomited into the dirt until there was nothing left but dry heaves and the taste of bile. The Scarecrow was standing 5 feet away. I could feel it watching me. I looked up, forgot the rule, looked directly at where its face should be. The burlap sack had torn more. Through the hole I could see what was inside. Not wood, not straw, not anything that should be in a Scarecrow. Flesh. Organs. Pieces of people compressed and woven together into a rough approximation of a human shape. I saw an eye, a hand, part of a face I recognized. Tom Miller from the hardware store. His features compressed and molded into the thing's torso. "You knew," the voice said in my head. "You always knew. You just didn't want to admit it." I scrambled backward, away from the bones, away from the Scarecrow, away from the truth I could no longer deny. "You're killing people," I said. "All of them. Everyone who disappears. You're eating them. I'm feeding your crops." That was the deal. Your crops need nutrition. Rich, organic nutrition. I provide it. You benefit. Everyone benefits except the ones who become nutrition. And let's be honest, Thomas Wilson, you stopped caring about them the moment your children's bellies were full. I'm ending this. I'm destroying you. The Scarecrow laughed. Multiple voices overlapping. Men and women and children. All the people it had consumed speaking at once. "Try. Please try. I'd love to see you attempt to kill something that's already been dead for 200 years. What are you?" "I'm old. Older than your grandfather's farm. Older than Kansas Territory. Older than this nation. I'm what grew in this soil before you planted wheat. What fed on buffalo and natives and anyone else who wandered into my reach. I'm the reason this land was always good for growing. Because I make it good. I make it rich. I make it hungry. Just like me. You're a demon. I'm a farmer, just like you. I cultivate. I harvest. I feed. The only difference is what I grow. You grow wheat. I grow death. And death makes excellent fertilizer." I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I forced them to hold. Forced myself to face the thing. "How many? How many people have you killed?" The Scarecrow tilted its head. An unnatural movement. Too fluid. In Kansas alone? Over the last century? Thousands. But across the country, across the centuries I've existed, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. I lose count. They all blur together after a while. Just meat, just nutrition, just fuel for the endless harvest. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to burn you and salt the earth and... The Scarecrow moved. One moment it was 5 feet away. The next it was right in front of me. Inches from my face. I could smell it. Rotting meat and fresh soil and something else underneath. Something ancient and wrong. "You can't stop me," it whispered. "Because I'm already inside you. You've been eating my harvest for months, drinking milk from cows that grazed on my soil, feeding your children bread made from my wheat. Every bite, every meal, every morsel has been contaminated, infected, changed. You're part of me now, all of you. And soon the transformation will be complete." I ran, left the Scarecrow standing in the field. Left the bones uncovered. Ran back to the house as fast as my legs would carry me. Martha and the children were in the kit, Watson. It was nearly 1 in the morning, but they were all awake, all sitting at the table, staring at the door like they'd been waiting for me. They turned to look at me when I burst in, all 3 at the same time. Same motion, same angle, same expression. Perfectly synchronized. "Daddy," Rebecca said. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Why did you burn the Scarecrow?" I hadn't burned it, hadn't even tried yet, but somehow she knew what I'd been thinking. "We need it," Samuel added. Same flat tone, same empty voice. We were growing so well. Martha stood up, smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was too wide, too empty, like something was wearing her face. "The crops need feeding, Thomas. You can't stop feeding the crops. We need to grow. We need to spread. We need to consume." They moved toward me together, all 3 stepping in unison. Same foot, same rhythm, like they were connected by invisible strings. I backed toward the door. My family. my wife and children, the people I'd sold my soul to protect. They weren't human anymore. The Scarecrow hadn't just been in the fields, it had been in the food. The wheat we'd eaten, the vegetables we'd harvested, the milk from cows that grazed on cursed soil. It had been inside us all along, inside my family, growing, changing, making them part of itself. "Don't leave," they said in unison, all three speaking the same words in the same voice. "We need you. The crops need you. The soil is hungry, and you have to feed it. You have to keep moving the Scarecrow. You have to keep the harvest growing. You have to become what we're becoming." They reached for me with synchronized movements. Their hands looked wrong, fingers too long, skin rough like bark. I grabbed my keys and ran for the truck, started the engine, drove away as fast as it would go. Behind me, my family stood in the doorway, not chasing, not crying, just watching me leave with empty eyes and synchronized breathing. Waiting, because they knew something I was just starting to realize. I couldn't leave. Not really. I'd eaten the food too, drunk the milk, fed on the cursed harvest for months. The Scarecrow was inside me too, in my blood, in my bones, in every cell of my body. I could feel it now that I knew to look for it. A wrongness in my stomach, a coldness in my veins, roots growing through my organs, spreading, branching, consuming me from the inside out. And it was hungry. So very, very hungry. I drove for 3 hours before the hunger hit. Not normal hunger. This was something else. Something deeper and more primal than anything I'd experienced. It started in my stomach but spread through my whole body like roots growing through soil. Branching through my organs, wrapping around my spine, digging into my brain. My hands shook on the wheel. My vision blurred, and I could feel something inside me reaching out, searching, questing for sustenance, for meat. I pulled over on a dusty road somewhere between my farm and nowhere, got out of the truck and fell to my knees, tried to breathe, but my lungs felt packed with earth. Tried to scream, but my throat was full of roots. I vomited, but what came up wasn't food. It was soil. Rich, black earth pouring from my mouth like I'd been eating it by the handful. It kept coming, cups of it, pounds of it. More soil than could possibly fit inside a human stomach. I coughed and gagged and vomited earth until I couldn't vomit anymore. Until I was dry, heaving nothing but small pebbles and clods of dirt. When I finally stopped, I looked at what I'd expelled. The pile of soil on the ground next to me. And I saw something in it, seeds, wheat seeds, dozens of them mixed in with the earth. And as I watched, they were already sprouting. Tiny green shoots pushing up through the vomited soil, growing impossibly fast, reaching toward the sun. I stumbled back to the truck. My hands were shaking. When I looked at them in the daylight, I could see the changes clearly now. My skin was darkening, taking on a rough, bark-like texture. And beneath the surface, I could see black lines, not veins, roots, spreading from my fingertips toward my wrists, branching up my arms. I pulled up my shirt. The roots were everywhere. A network of black lines covering my torso like cracks in dry earth. And where they intersected, my skin was different, harder, more like wood than flesh. I was transforming, becoming what the Scarecrow was, what it had always been, a thing that fed on death to create life. "We are the soil," a voice whispered in my head. Not the Scarecrow's voice, my own voice, but wrong, layered with something else, multiple tones speaking as one. We are what feeds. We are what grows. We are what consumes. We are eternal. We are patient. We are hungry. No, I gasped. I'm Thomas Wilson. I'm a farmer. I'm human. You were human. Now you're something better. Something that will never starve, never fail, never die. You're part of the harvest now, part of the network, part of us. I looked at my hands again. The roots had grown while I watched. Now they were past my wrists, climbing toward my elbows, and I could feel them inside me too, growing through my chest, wrapping around my heart, squeezing. Each beat of my heart pushed the roots further. Each breath filled my lungs with earth. Each thought was becoming less mine and more theirs. I got back in the truck, started the engine, tried to drive away. West toward California, east toward Missouri. Anywhere that wasn't the farm. But my hands turned the wheel north, back toward home, back toward the fields, back toward the Scarecrow. No, I said aloud. No, I'm not going back. But the truck kept driving north. My hands on the wheel but not under my control. My feet on the pedals but moving without my permission. The hunger was guiding me, and the hunger knew where it needed to go. I fought it, tried to force my hands to turn the wheel, tried to make my feet hit the brakes, but my body wasn't mine anymore. It was being operated by something else, something that lived in the roots and the soil and the endless network of connected minds. The drive back took an hour. Every mile I felt more of myself slipping away, more of my thoughts being replaced by other thoughts, older thoughts, hungrier thoughts. By the time I pulled up to the farmhouse, I could barely remember why I'd tried to leave in the first place. Martha and the children were waiting in the yard. They looked different now. Their skin had the same dark, bark-like texture as mine. Their eyes were hollow, empty of everything that had made them who they were. But they smiled when they saw me, all three at once. Same smile, same expression, same inhuman joy. "Welcome home," they said in unison. Perfect synchronization. "We knew you'd come back. The crops need tending, the soil needs feeding, the harvest needs growing." I got out of the truck slowly. Every movement felt wrong, like my body was being puppeted, like someone else was pulling the strings. "What happened to us?" I asked. The question came out, but I wasn't sure who was asking it. Me or the thing I was becoming. "We evolved," Martha said. Her voice was flat, but somehow pleased. "We became what we needed to be, what the land needed us to be. What the soil demanded we become. The Scarecrow was just the beginning." Samuel stepped forward. His skin was almost entirely transformed now. More bark than flesh. The seed that was planted. But now we're all seeds, all growing, all spreading, all becoming the harvest. Rebecca took my hand. Her skin felt like rough wood. Touching her was like touching a tree. "Daddy, we can feed forever now. Never be hungry again, never suffer, never die. We just need to tend the crops, move the Scarecrow, spread the seeds, grow the network." "The network?" She pointed to the fields. The wheat was moving even though there was no wind, swaying in patterns that were too regular, too synchronized. And I could see shapes in the wheat now, human shapes, dozens of them, standing in the rows, all the people the Scarecrow had consumed, all merged with the plants, part of the harvest, but not dead, not really, just transformed, changed into something else. "They're all still alive," Rebecca said. "Still aware, still connected, all part of us, all part of the network, all growing together, all feeding together, all being fed together." I walked toward the fields. Couldn't stop myself. My feet carried me forward without my permission. As I got closer, I could see the people more clearly. Men and women and children, all standing in the wheat, roots growing from their feet deep into the soil. Their skin entirely transformed to bark, their arms raised like branches, their mouths open but silent. And I could hear them, not with my ears, with something else, some new sense that came with the transformation, their thoughts, their awareness, all connected through the roots, all linked through the soil. Hundreds of minds merged into one collective consciousness. They were the network, and I was being added to it. "This is wrong," I tried to say. "We're not supposed to be this. We're exactly what we're supposed to be," a new voice said. I turned. Elijah Thorne was standing behind me. He looked the same as he had in July when he'd first arrived. Suit clean, smile wide, not a day older. But now I could see what he really was. The same darkness under his skin that was under mine. The same roots spreading through his veins. The same transformation that had happened to me and my family and everyone in the fields. "You're one of them," I said. "One of these things." "I'm a businessman, Mr. Wilson. I provide agricultural solutions to desperate farmers. Have been for 200 years. You're not my first client, won't be my last. The Dust Bowl has been very good for business. So many desperate farmers, so many people willing to make deals they don't fully understand. You infected us, you turned us into monsters. I offered you a choice. You accepted. Everything that happened after was consequence, natural progression, transformation, evolution. You wanted to save your farm. I gave you the means. What you became is simply the price. You lied. You said it was just a scarecrow, just something to make crops grow. It is just something to make crops grow." Thorne walked closer. I could see roots moving beneath his skin like worms. "The scarecrow feeds on meat and produces abundant harvests. You feed on meat and become the scarecrow. It's symbiotic, efficient, perfect in its design. Nature at its most brutal and most beautiful. I destroyed it, burned it, killed it. You tried, but you can't kill it because it's not alive. Not in the way you understand life. It's a force, like gravity, like growth, like hunger itself. It simply is, and it spreads, always spreads. That's what it does. That's its purpose. Then I'll kill myself. Stop the spread. Too late for that." Thorne gestured to the fields, to the hundreds of transformed people standing in the wheat. "You've already spread it. The wheat you harvested and sold. The vegetables you gave to neighbors before they disappeared. The milk your cows produced. It's all contaminated now, all carrying the seed. And everyone who consumed it is transforming. Just like you. Just like your family. Just like everyone here." "How many?" I asked. My voice was weak, distant, like it was coming from somewhere else. "How many people?" "Hundreds from your farm alone. But you weren't my only client this year. I've made 47 deals in Kansas, 32 in Oklahoma, 28 in Nebraska, all desperate farmers, all willing to accept my scarecrow, all spreading the seed through their harvests." He pulled out a map from his jacket. It was covered in marks. Red dots scattered across the Great Plains states, each dot representing a farm, a scarecrow, a spreading infection. Your wheat went to grain elevators in Dodge City, mixed with wheat from other infected farms, shipped to bakeries across Kansas, across the Midwest, across the country. And everyone who ate bread made from that grain is carrying the seed now, becoming part of the network, part of the harvest. "Thousands?" I whispered. "Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands by now. It spreads fast when people are hungry, when they're desperate enough to eat anything. The Dust Bowl is killing millions through starvation. I'm saving them, transforming them, making them into something that can never starve again. You're destroying humanity. I'm evolving humanity, making it better, more efficient, more connected, more sustainable. A network that shares resources, that feeds together, that grows together, that never dies. Isn't that better than the alternative? Better than starving in the dust? My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the soil. Rich, dark soil that should have been dust but was instead thick with nutrients. Nutrients from human bodies, from the disappeared, from the consumed. Oh God, I said, what have I done? What you had to do. What every desperate farmer has done throughout history. You made a deal. You paid the price. And now you reap the reward. Eternal harvest. Eternal growth. Eternal life as part of something greater than yourself. I looked at my hands. The transformation was accelerating now that I was back on the farm. Back on contaminated soil. The roots were climbing past my elbows toward my shoulders. I could feel them wrapping around my collarbones, reaching toward my neck. Can you change us back? I asked. My voice was barely audible. Can you make us human again? Thorn crouched down next to me, put his hand on my shoulder. His touch was cold and rough like touching wood. They are human, just evolved, improved, optimized for survival. In a few hours, the transformation will be complete. They'll be fully integrated with the network, part of the collective, and you will too. What if I refuse? What if I resist? You can't. The hunger won't let you. He stood up, extended his hand to help me up. You felt it, didn't you? When you tried to drive away? The pull, the need, the certainty that you had to come back. That's not me controlling you. That's your new nature. You're part of the soil now, part of the network. And the network always calls its own home. I looked at his hand, at the roots visible under his skin, at the darkness in his eyes that had once been white. Then I looked at my own hands, at my arms, at the reflection in the truck's side mirror. I was almost gone, almost entirely transformed. My face was dark, my eyes were hollow, my mouth moved, but the voice that came out wasn't entirely mine anymore. How long, I asked, how long have you been doing this? Since the first harvest, Thorn said. Since humans learned to farm. Since they started gathering in one place and growing crops and building civilizations. I've been there, offering deals, spreading seeds, growing the network. Every famine, every drought, every desperate time, I appear, I offer solutions, and the network grows. How far does it go? Everywhere. Every continent. Every nation. Millions of people worldwide. All connected through the soil, all part of the harvest. And now, thanks to the Dust Bowl, thanks to desperate American farmers, the network is spreading faster than ever. Within a generation, maybe two, everyone will be part of it. Everyone will be connected. Everyone will be the harvest. That's genocide. That's evolution. Thorn smiled. And you're part of it now. Welcome to the family, Mr. Wilson. Welcome to the eternal harvest. I wanted to fight, wanted to resist, wanted to maintain some shred of my humanity. But the hunger was so strong, and my family was here, and the crops were growing, and the part of me that was still Thomas Wilson was so small now, being consumed by something older, hungrier, more patient. I took his hand. He pulled me to my feet. I was taller than I'd been. The transformation had stretched me, made me more like the Scarecrow, more like Thorn, more like what we were all becoming. Good, he said. Now let's tend to your crops. They're almost ready for the next harvest, and there are more farmers to visit, more deals to make, more seeds to plant. We walked into the fields together. Martha and the children followed, and the wheat parted for us like we were walking through water. The human shapes I'd seen were clearer now, men and women and children, all standing in the rows, roots growing from their feet deep into the soil, arms raised like branches, faces peaceful, empty, the Hartwells, the Johnsons, the Morrisons, the Kellers, the Davis family, all of them, all merged with the wheat, all part of the harvest, all connected through the network. I could hear their thoughts now, feel their awareness. Hundreds of minds speaking at once, and my mind was joining them, merging with the collective. We are the soil. We are what feeds. We are what grows. We are eternal. This is your legacy, Thorn said. Everyone you fed, everyone who ate your grain, everyone who consumed what you grew, they're all becoming this, all spreading the seed, all joining the network, all transforming. How many from my harvest? I asked. My voice was layered now, multiple tones. Not just me speaking, but the network speaking through me. At least 3,000. Your wheat went to bakeries in 6 states. Those bakeries made bread for tens of thousands. And everyone who ate that bread is transforming. Spreading the seed to their families, their communities, their cities. The growth is exponential. You're going to turn America into a farm. I'm going to save America from starvation, from suffering, from death. Everyone who joins us will never be hungry again. Never suffer, never die. Isn't that what every farmer wants, to feed the world? I knelt in the soil, my knees sank deep, and I could feel it. The pull, the connection, the network calling me home. Let the roots from my feet sink into the earth. Felt them spreading, branching, connecting with every other root in the field, in the county, in the state, in the nation. Millions of minds, all connected, all growing, all feeding, all being fed. Martha knelt beside me, then Samuel, then Rebecca. We sank into the soil together as a family. Roots spreading, minds merging, bodies becoming part of the field. The last thing I saw as Thomas Wilson was Thorn walking away, toward his car, toward the next desperate farmer, the next deal, the next spreading of the seed. The last thing I thought as an individual was how beautiful the wheat looked, how golden, how heavy with grain, how ready for harvest. Then I wasn't Thomas Wilson anymore. I was the soil, the network, the hunger, the harvest, and I would grow forever. The Dust Bowl continued through 1939. 5 more years of drought and dust and desperate farmers. 5 more years of Thorn making deals. 5 more years of the network spreading. By 1940, the contaminated grain had reached every state, had been baked into bread and eaten by millions. The transformation was slow, subtle. Most people didn't notice the changes until it was too late. The roots growing beneath their skin, the darkness spreading through their veins, the connection forming in their minds. By 1945, 10% of America was part of the network. By 1950, 20%. By 1960, half. And in the fields of Kansas, if you knew where to look, you could see them. Standing in the wheat, faces frozen, eyes empty, roots deep, waiting, growing, feeding, forever. The harvest was eternal, and it was hungry, always hungry.